Silent Hill is a game with a complicated history that has spawned a lot of urban myths and controversies. Sometimes it is due to the subtlety of the games themselves, sometimes due to official statements that either contradict each other or tell half-truths for specific reasons. In this video, I've compiled 5 cases of people related to Silent Hill telling lies, in my opinion. After the third and fourth game's poor sales, Konami decided to outsource the series outside Japan, and Tom Hewlett became the face of development. He is credited as associate producer, that is, producer's assistant, a man that has no decision-making power, but is involved in production and expresses his opinions on various things. We all know how community has received these games. Negatively. So negatively that Tom Hewlett became the face of hatred for many people, that blamed him for the miserable metamorphosis of the series. But lo and behold, as it turns out, we actually have to thank Tom, because if it wasn't for his efforts, Homecoming would have been something unthinkable.
One of my biggest contributions, I guess, was I went through and made sure that things fit into canon. I know some fans would argue that, but they didn't see the first draft that I saw, so you have to take my word for it. But originally the producer of that game intended it to be the first in a trilogy.
Wait, what?
Yeah, so
Wow.
we could have had 3 games with Alex Shepard, and Heather would come back to Silent Hill and join up with him and such. And the big end scene that they were planning was sort of this, big showdown between Josh, who represented water, and Alessa, who represented fire, and then sort of have a Super Saiyan battle over Toluca Lake.
Wow.
What?
So things like that, I tried my best to get rid of.
Well, thank you for stopping it from being a trilogy and having some Super Saiyan battle at the end.
Isn't that lovely? Tom did everything he could. It's the devs that are responsible for the game's failure. As soon as I heard it back then, I knew he was lying. You made a game that flopped. Those who didn't like it are very angry at you. That's your heritage. You Google your name and see people cursing you. You look at funny memes about it. What can you do with that? Go on a fan podcast and say that the game could have been 100 times worse if it wasn't for you. Make up some bullshit that will overshadow the nonsense that happened in the game. And it worked. Everybody loves Tom Hewlett now, a poor victim of toxic community. The plot of Homecoming was written by 3 people. Lead designer Jason Allen, lead artist Brian Horton, and lead level designer Daniel Jacobs. After that, the plot was finished and made into an actual script by Patrick Doody and Chris Valenziano. I've contacted them and only got replies from Doody and Valenziano. That would have been fun, but we certainly never discussed that during any of the production phase of the game. I have no mention of Alessa anywhere in my scripts, other than a historical document we used for reference. That said, Tom may have had higher level conversation with Konami, but that was nothing ever discussed with us during the 2 years that we were on. Anyway, I don't believe Tom Hewlett. I see this whole situation as a plan to save face. And God knows, this type of damage control is popular, because 2 years later... The previous game of the series, Origins, started in the LA studio of Climax. Sometime later, it was moved to their British studio. Origins has a better reputation than Homecoming. Only die-hard fans of the original Japanese game think that it's bad, and their population is less than that of the Vatican. However, in 2014, the head of the British Climax, Sam Barlow, revealed to the world that the first version was a black comedy partially inspired by Scrubs. I bless the rains down in Africa. Tom Hewlett was saving himself in the face of history. What made Sam Barlow tell falsehoods about Origins? 2 years later, he made Shattered Memories, a universally loved game that even the most stubborn fans of the first 4 games acknowledge. Why, Sammy, why? Only one explanation. He's telling the truth. I couldn't find the exact date when the development transferred from the US to the UK. In one interview, the devs say they had 6 months to finish up the game. In another interview, 1 year. Let's assume they had 1 year. Origins came out in November 2007. Therefore, it left American office around November 2006. The first trailer released in May 2006, half a year prior to the aforementioned date. The trailer was gloomy and gory, no hints of comedy. In all interviews from LA period, they said the game was going to be serious, canonical, and meet our expectations. Besides, there are a lot of early builds, cutscenes, and concept arts, and none of it has anything related to comedy. Silent Hill 2 was more of a comedy than this one. Let's think about it logically. Climax LA, who was lucky to have this contract, would say something like, what do we do? How do we, a not-so-prospering company, complete this project so that everyone likes the game, it sells well, and it serves as a fine addition to our CVs, and Konami are left satisfied and outsource a few more games to us? I know, let's make it into a Scrubs-inspired black comedy.
Ow! 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 Doug!
I'm not buying it. Say what you want, I don't believe it. I think it's a Hewlett case again. I just don't understand why. Perhaps Barlow wanted to be known for a truly successful Shattered Memories. Who knows? The strange case of Harry Mason's voice actor. Credits say it's Michael G. There is a long-standing rumor that it was Michael Goff, a famous VA who voiced Deckard Cain from Diablo, for example. But in 2008, someone asked him directly, and he replied that he did not, in fact, voice Harry Mason. 10 years later, an interview with a certain Michael Guinn was released. Michael Guinn claimed that he had voiced several characters in a number of Japanese games of that time, including Harry Mason from Silent Hill. So what's the problem? Here's the problem. Michael Goff sounds exactly like Harry Mason. I hear his voice, and I have no doubt it's Harry Mason.
Have you seen a little girl, just turned 7 last month? My daughter. I've got to find her. In that case, I need to find her now.
You had to pick one.
Favorite? That's, it's like asking, who's your favorite child?
Any one of my guys would have killed him. My daughter thinks you're a hero.
If you imagined hard enough, you can also think that Michael Guinn sounds similar to Harry, but to a much lesser extent.
Japanese had this approach, and maybe it happens here in the States or other places like that as well. But the first thing I sang for the Sony Walkman was kind of a ballad. It was a very emotional ballad.
Here's my theory. Michael Goff voiced Harry Mason, but he didn't like how it turned out. Silent Hill 1 is notorious for its voice acting. Michael Goff doesn't want to be known for that. So, he repudiated this role. Who is Michael Guinn, and why does he pretend to be the voice of Harry? I have no idea. The most realistic explanation is that he's Goff's acquaintance, and Goff asked him to give a couple of interviews to cover for him. Or, maybe Goff himself gave the interview, and Guinn only provided pictures of himself. You might be thinking I'm a schizo, but here's my final argument. 2 years later, Michael Goff, yes, the actual Goff, voiced a character in Metal Gear Solid 2, a Konami game, developed in the same office as Silent Hill 1, was made 2 years prior to that. What are the chances that 2 American Michael G's voiced Konami games 2 years apart? In the Silent Hill 2 development video, Takayoshi Sato said that he couldn't trust motion capture to animate faces because it doesn't capture the nuances.
As a matter of fact, to obtain better results in face animation, Sato did not resort to motion capture.
I couldn't trust the face motion capture. That motion capture system took just the position of the skin. If you open the mouth, muscles around here is tighten, but a motion capture cannot capture it.
Okay, the first game to use face mocap that I know of is LA Noire, 2011. Maybe face mocap was used earlier in a more primitive way, for Silent Hill 2 was being developed in 2000 to 2001. I highly doubt the mocap of that time was suitable for games. If it was, I doubt it yielded worse results than Silent Hill 2's facial animation. I'm not saying it's bad. For 2001, it might have been the best in the industry. But there are definitely no nuances Sato was talking about. In short, I think Sato is lying. After I had written and voiced the script, I realized that Sato may have meant CG cutscenes. Facial animation there was much better. Still, the lip sync was all over the place, and I don't understand why they didn't use mocap as a base and then fine-tune it. So my point stands. I think that Sato simply didn't have access to facial mocap. He was asked, "Do you use facial mocap?" What possible answers did he have? First, he could have said, facial mocap is not used for games. But what if it is used? Sato is cool and all, but he's just an overburdened Japanese guy working for a shithole of a company. Who knows if there's facial mocap? Maybe only Konami doesn't have it. Second option, he could have said, "Oh, we don't have that technology." But that would put Konami in a bad light. They won't commend him for that. The safest answer would be, mocap sucks. I animate better by hand. So that's how it went. There is a famous whisper in Silent Hill 2. People have been trying to make out what it says for years. They've asked the devs. And the devs replied that, allegedly, some actor muttered something, no one knows exactly what, but they decided to leave it because it sounds kind of creepy. In the end, it was found out that it's a stock sound. I'm not saying Jeremy Blaustein was lying. He wasn't in charge of sound design. Perhaps that was just his guess. So, do I have 4 cases instead of 5? No. I've come up with another one. That's a known rumor, a source for which I cannot find right now. But it definitely happened. Yamaoka said in an interview, he composed Theme of Laura in 3 days. Why do I think he is telling a half-truth? Here is a trailer from September 2000. It has an early version of the track. It's different. It has different structure, and doesn't even have the motif. If Yamaoka composed it in 3 days, how can there be a trailer with a significantly different version of it? It can only happen if the trailer was made during the process of composition. You can see how unlikely it is. Obviously, Yamaoka meant that he made a draft in 3 days. But to say he composed the whole track in 3 days? That's an exaggeration. Don't get me wrong, I still love Yamaoka. I love everybody. Yamaoka, Sato, Michael G. It's just the topic of the video.